This doesn't matter at all to the story, but I forgot to say this in the show, so I'll give you a little bonus content. Mrs. Cratchit, because she didn't have an oven, because she didn't have a stove, she literally cooked her Christmas pudding in the washing machine. They talk about how she cooked it in the copper. The copper were these huge like laundry bins that they would like heat up the water, and they were like full of steam and stuff, and so people would hang stuff over the edge to cook them. And so I don't know, like, I think sometimes we set up Ebenezer Scrooge as the hero of A Christmas Carol, but I think the real hero is just Mrs. Cratchit for just like making it fucking work. And now the show is over.
I heard you're doing better. I heard you're putting on you think anybody knows. All I have is a story of who I am and what I've done. Yeah, we get an absolution, or are we always on the run?
Catieosaurus!
One, two, 3, 4. Gotta rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. Tonight we ask the question, how much did that turkey weigh? When Scrooge fucked over Mrs. Cratchit on that Christmas day. Oh, tidings of comfort and joy, comfort and joy. Oh, Marley was dead to begin with. There could be no doubt whatsoever about that. The register of his burial was signed by the clergyman, the clerk, the undertaker, and the chief mourner. Scrooge signed it, and Scrooge's name was good upon change for anything he chose to put his hand to. Old Marley was dead as a doornail. Mind, I don't mean to say that I know of my own knowledge what there is particularly dead about a doornail. I might have been inclined myself to regard a coffin nail as the deadest piece of ironmongery in the trade, but the wisdom of our ancestors is in the simile, and my unhallowed hands shall not disturb it, or the country's done for. You will therefore permit me to repeat emphatically that Marley was dead as a doornail. Scrooge knew he was dead? Of course he did. How could it be otherwise? Scrooge and he were partners for I don't know how many years. Scrooge was his sole executor, his sole administrator, his sole assign, his sole residuary legatee, his sole friend, and his sole mourner. The mention of Marley's funeral brings me back to the point I started from. There is no doubt that Marley was dead. This must be distinctly understood, or nothing wonderful can come of the story I am going to relate. If we were not perfectly convinced that Hamlet's father died before the play began, there would be nothing more remarkable in his taking a stroll at night in an easterly wind upon his own ramparts than there would be in any other middle-aged gentleman rashly turning out after dark in a breezy spot, say St. Paul's churchyard, for instance, literally to astonish his son's weak mind. Oh my God, is she just gonna read us the book the whole time? Hi everybody, welcome to the show! Thank you all so much to be here. Hold on, my husband can't make the tech work.
I've got nothing in 2 of your cameras.
Oh, that's okay. We'll do it live. Yay!
We'll fix it in post.
That's fine. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Thank you all so much for being here. I really and truly, this means the world to me. So I have always thought it would be really funny to open a show, to announce a show and say, hey, guess what? We're gonna do a production of A Christmas Carol. We're gonna do improv comedy. And then we lock the doors and it's a full-length production of Hamlet. We got it, boys! Let's do it! No, it's not. This is actually an academic lecture about the turkey and A Christmas Carol. It's a very different thing. But that's not a bit. And several people have reached out to me regarding the show and they're going, you're joking, right? It's not actually about the turkey. But it is. It's actually about the turkey and A Christmas Carol, which I feel begets some context. So I don't know about all of you, but I grew up loving A Christmas Carol. It was one of my favorite things when I was a kid. It was a part of my holiday tradition every year. But I remember as a kid, I would watch my mom and my aunts and my grandmothers in the kitchen, and I'd be like, man, a turkey kind of seems like a shitty gift. You know, like it seemed like a weird thing. And I don't know why, but I carried that with me into adulthood. And then about 5 years ago, I was bored because there was nothing happening. It was the midst of the pandemic and I was very sad. And so I thought, okay, well, I'm gonna go back to A Christmas Carol. Maybe there's something in Christmas Carol that I can use right now. And I don't know why, but I just got obsessed with the idea of the turkey and how big was the turkey in A Christmas Carol. And I Googled it and I could not find the answer. And then I did a little bit more research and a little bit more research and a little bit more research. And ultimately I found the answer, which is why we are all here tonight to discuss that answer. But the thing of it is that that answer begat an essay. And that essay begat a podcast. And that podcast was one of the first things that I ever did that actually got some kind of attention on the internet. And so it was really fun because there was like a little holiday tradition surrounding the turkey. And so for 5 years, I was like, I'm gonna do it. I'm gonna make a video version. I'm gonna make a video version of the turkey essay and it will be my legacy. But the problem is that I'm a nerd, and so I was raised on like Ken Burns documentaries and like BBC documentaries, and like I envisioned this like turkey documentary where it's like me in period costume like in front of Bob Cratchit's house going like, I'm here in front of Bob Cratchit's house and like, here's the guy. I don't know who the guy would be, there's a guy, you know? But I don't have like period costume and a guy money. I have like sitting in front of my computer money. And so the video languished. And so this year, I was like, I know what I'll do. I'm gonna drop a trailer. I'm gonna drop a trailer for the turkey video, and I'm gonna tell everybody that it's coming out on Thanksgiving weekend, and that is gonna force my hand. And assuredly, that will mean that I get the turkey video made. You're not gonna believe what happened. Through a just devastating combination of debilitating ADHD and hubris, I in fact did not make the turkey video. So the reason why this means so much to me tonight is that we together here are embracing just a beautiful ADHD tradition of quite literally doing the assignment the night it's due. Also, I've never done this in front of people before, and so I keep being surprised when you laugh, so thank you. I really appreciate that. I'm also going to tell you this going in. I'm very nervous. I have stage fright, which is really weird because I'm a content creator and a theater person, but I have terrible stage fright. So this right here, these are my note cards, and this is my emergency ripcord. If at any point during the show I get too scared or I get too lost, I'm going to refer to the note cards. Don't panic. It just means that I want to get it right. And now I'm going to drink some water. So before we get into the meat and potatoes of the evening, if you will, that works, actually, that works. There are actually textually potatoes. We'll get to that in a moment. Before we do that, I feel like just in case you have not, you're not familiar with A Christmas Carol, just in case you need a little bit of a refresher, I thought, like, let's get everybody on the same page before we begin. So, Christmas Carol was written by Charles Dickens in December of 1843. It came out 2 weeks before Christmas, and it was revolutionary. It changed the way that we celebrate Christmas. And Christmas Carol is the story of a man named Ebenezer Scrooge. Thank you. Oh, we got an ah and an ooh. That's so exciting. And the thing about Ebenezer Scrooge is that Ebenezer Scrooge is a piece of shit. He is not a very nice man. Ebenezer Scrooge works at sort of a combination of like a predatory payday loan company and a mortgage company. Like you got your chocolate and my peanut butter sort of situation, right? And Scrooge is a reprehensible person. And Charles Dickens is very specifically tells us this. One of the first things we hear Scrooge talking about is like, I say let them die and decrease the surplus population, right? Like not a nice thing to say. So Scrooge, also, this doesn't matter at all, but this is like one of my favorite pieces of art about Scrooge, and it's Scrooge and the literal actual devil. And I feel like this goes really hard as a tattoo. I don't know. Scrooge has an employee. His name is Bob Cratchit, and Bob Cratchit, much like many of us, is underpaid and overworked. And Bob Cratchit does not make a lot of money. He makes 15 shillings a week working for Ebenezer Scrooge. And Bob Cratchit, he has a son at home, and his name is Tiny Tim, and Tiny Tim is sick. Now here's the thing. This also, there's going to be a lot of things. That's how you know it's real when I start giggling like that. The thing of it is, there's gonna be a lot of stuff that like doesn't really matter to the story tonight, so just know that going in. But a lot of scholars have talked about like what is actually wrong with Tiny Tim. We don't know, right? Like some scholars say it's like, oh, like tuberculosis. Some say it's like dwarfism. Some people say it's like diphtheria. We don't know, but like just for the sake of it, Tiny Tim is sick. Okay, Scrooge had a business partner named Jacob Marley. Ooh, and Jacob Marley died. I know, Jacob Marley died 7 years ago this very night. In the book, not this night, on Christmas Eve. 7 years ago this very night on Christmas Eve, right? So Scrooge goes home. I don't know what the next picture is. I forgot to rehearse this part. Yeah. So Scrooge goes home alone in his cold and angry room, being a cold and angry miser and always grumpy, and he eats oatmeal for dinner because he's so grumpy. And the corporeal form of Jacob Marley appears to Ebenezer Scrooge, and he says, Scrooge! And he's got these long chains that he's dragging, and they're attached to like boxes where you keep your gold and your treasure because it was before Bitcoin. And so he's like, Scrooge, these are the chains I forged in life. Mankind was my business, kindness was my business, but I focused on business, and that's a different kind of business. And Scrooge is like, okay. Okay. Also, this doesn't matter to the story much, I feel. But okay, so textually, we know Jacob Marley tells Scrooge that he has journeyed through the underworld for 7 years. He dies. He died. He gets his chains. They like distribute the chains at the chain emporium. And he takes his chains and he drags, and it takes him 7 years to get to Scrooge. And we know that Scrooge was a soul mourner. He was soul residuary, soul legatee. I was like, I don't know about you, but I wouldn't travel through the underworld for 7 years from my business partner. Do you know what I'm saying? I feel like history will say they're business partners. They were fucking, right? So anyway, so Jacob Marley proceeds to explain to Scrooge that he has arranged a little party, a little fun event, and Scrooge is going to be visited by 3 ghosts. And again, this doesn't matter to the story, but it's my favorite thing because Jacob Marley's like, you will be visited by 3 ghosts, oh. And Scrooge is like, no, thank you. Nah, I'd rather not. And it's like, that's so rude, right? Like your boyfriend comes back from the dead, corporeal forms himself, chains and all, to be like, hey man, you fucking your life up. I got you some ghosts. And you're like, nah, I'm good. Like, that's crazy. That's crazy behavior, right? I get so heated about A Christmas Carol. It's fine. Hold on. I wasn't expecting you. This is way faster than I usually rehearse it. I'm leaving the lid off, which is immediately dangerous. Okay. So that's fine. So Scrooge goes to bed. He goes to bed. And then Scrooge is visited by the first of 3 ghosts. The ghost of Christmas past And now, okay, this also doesn't matter at all to the story, but just like canonically, this is what the Ghost of Christmas Past looks like. And he's supposed to be like a candle that's like almost burned out. But the thing of it is that I strongly feel that like in history, no ghost has been done as dirty as the Ghost of Christmas Past. Like, what is this shit, right? Like, what? Nobody asked you for the dark crystal. It could have just been a Muppet. It could have just been a Muppet. Do you know what I mean? And then like, I don't even know what the fuck. And like Tilda Swinton, maybe, I don't know, right? So anyway, so the Ghost of Christmas Past takes Scrooge to his childhood. And it's this beautiful narrative device where we, as the reader, get to sort of experience Scrooge's life along with him, and we start to understand why Scrooge became the way he is, why Scrooge became so angry, so obsessed with money, so obsessed with gold. And it's because Scrooge's father was put in jail, in debtor's prison, right? And he was separated from his family, he was separated from his sister, and he was made to go live in a school where there were horrible working conditions and all of these things, and it was very sad. And he finds this like childhood book, and he's like, oh my goodness, Alibaba. I was just moving that, but I found a clever way to do it. So then the Ghost of Christmas Past takes him to Fezziwigs, the Fezziwigs ball. He takes him to his old employer, and Scrooge remembers that it's okay to be like a good employer. You can just like throw pizza parties and shit, and people will love you. And so the Fezziwigs like remind Scrooge of like what it means to be part of like, you know, like a really good like family company, and it's great. And then we see his fiance. We see his fiance break up with him because she's no longer in love with him, because already this idea of like gold and consuming and like gathering money has like consumed him, and she drops just the most ice cold, stone cold bitch line that you have ever heard. She's like, Ebenezer, since you're so obsessed with gold, whoo, and she takes off her ring and she goes, here's another piece of gold back for you. That's so cold. That's so cold. That's crazy, right? And so Scrooge is like, oh no, my past was terrible. I learned a lesson, I guess, maybe. We'll find out in Act 3. And then Scrooge falls back asleep. And he is visited by the Ghost of Christmas Present, who fucks. Like, come on, you know what I mean? So the Ghost of Christmas Present takes Scrooge all about London, and we see Scrooge, we see the people of London celebrating Christmas, the poor, the rich and the poor, the tall and the small, the businessmen and the seamen, which I think is funny because I'm immature. You laugh too. Yeah, thank you, I appreciate that. And then, this also doesn't matter to the story, but then the Ghost of Christmas Present does something wild. He's like, oh, and Scrooge, before I leave you, these are the children that live under my robe. Their names are Ignorance and Want, because I'm an asshole. Like, what? And then he's like, yeah, and like Ignorance and Want are like, it's like a David S. Pumpkins thing. They're part of it. And so yeah, and Scrooge is like, okay, all right, that's fine. And then what happens? Oh yeah, and then Scrooge is finally visited by the quietest ghost, the ghost who relies on body language. That was an Ursula joke, thank you. But so the Ghost of Christmas yet to come, the Ghost of Christmas future, he takes Scrooge and he shows Scrooge a funeral. And Scrooge, okay. The rant here is going to be lengthy, but I do need you to hear me out. Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So, the Ghost of Christmas Past takes Scrooge to Scrooge's childhood school. Then he takes him to his old boss, and then he shows him his old girlfriend. And then Ghost of Christmas Present is like, hey Scrooge, here's all of the main characters that we've already met and their Christmases. And then the Ghost of Christmas yet to come is like, oh, he doesn't say anything because he's a quiet ghost. He's like, come on, Scrooge, let's go look at this funeral. And the whole time Scrooge is like, what sorry man is this? Whose funeral could this be? And it's like, Scrooge, fuck's sake, man. And so then the Ghost of Christmas yet to come, the Ghost of Christmas future, takes Scrooge to the Cratchits. And we find out that Tiny Tim dies. And now, when I was a child, this was my favorite part. And here is why. Hear me out. Here is why. Because you grow up with like Christmas, right? You grow up with like the stories of Christmas, and it's like Santa and fairies and snowflakes and the elves who make toys. And then, but there's this one story. There's this one story that's like, and kids fucking die too, right? And the thing is like, I don't know, like one of my favorite types of humor is like conversations that I will never be privy to, but I'm sure that happens somewhere. And like, I think a lot about like how we as like children, as people, we grow up, right? And you start with like Mickey Mouse. You start with like Mickey Mouse Christmas Carol, and then you graduate to like Muppet Christmas Carol, and then you get to like the other ones, right? But like every single one of those writers' rooms had to have the conversation. Every single one of those writer rooms had to be like, okay, so he does have to die. And we do have to have Miss Piggy deliver a devastating monologue about the specific description and location of his grave, and what it looks like, and how much we missed him. But like, maybe could he just get sicker? Like, and they're like, no, he has to fucking die. I don't know, I just think that's funny. I know, like, not like that, but like that. Do you know what I mean? But so anyway, so Tiny Tim dies, and Scrooge is like, oh no, if only someone could have helped. And the Ghost of Christmas Past is like, or future is like, you know? And so then the Ghost of Christmas Future takes Scrooge to a graveyard, and because again, he's a quiet ghost, he points. And this fucking guy, this fucking Scrooge, is like, whose grave could this be? Oh no, a grave! Is it Bob from HR? Like, no. And so the Ghost of Christmas fucking Future like scrapes the leaves off of it, and it's like, it has your fucking name on it, man. Like, and so yeah, so then Scrooge, he's like, oh no, I learned a valuable lesson again, right? Oh, so then Scrooge wakes up, and it's Christmas Day. He doesn't know that yet, but it's Christmas Day. And the bells are ringing, and he has this rejuvenated joy of life, and he's like, oh, I'm as giddy as a schoolboy, I'm as young as a lad, or whatever the fuck. And so, so that happens. And then Scrooge like gets out of bed, and like away to the window he flies like a flash, tears open the curtains and throws up the sash. And there out on the street there's a little boy. And the little boy's like, God rest ye merry gentlemen, let nothing you dismay. And Scrooge is like, you there boy, what day is it? And then Scrooge, and the boy's like, well, it's Christmas Day, sir. And then Scrooge is like, well, then I haven't missed it. Okay, so this doesn't matter at all to the story, but as an autistic person, this has always ground my gears. So Jacob Marley, it's like, it feels like the watch in Breaking Bad. This is the watch moment in Breaking Bad. Because what happens is, Jacob Marley tells Scrooge, he's like, you're gonna be visited by 3 ghosts, but like on a Monday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday night. And then the ghosts get together, and they're like, I don't have enough material for the group project, do you? And they're like, no, I only have like solidly like maybe an hour. And so then they like collab, and they're like, we'll just do it all in one night. So Scrooge is like, they've done it all in one night. And then, Scrooge, to recap, having experienced the incorporeal form of his business partner, appearing to him to inform him that not only is there an afterlife, but it is kind of a terrible one, in which you are punished grievously for your sins. Scrooge, having just learned that ghosts are real, having learned that time travel is real, having learned that if you are with a ghost, you too can become an incorporeal person and like travel about time and witness your own past, Scrooge asked this child a question that I'm sure would be the question on everyone's mind. Having just experienced all of that, he says, is the prize turkey still hanging in the poultry shop? And then the boy says, what, the one as big as me, sir? And Scrooge is like, yeah, go fetch it for me. And if you bring it back in 20 minutes, I'll give you half a crown. And the kid's like, wow, that's $25 adjusted for inflation, okay. I really didn't expect that to get a laugh. Hold on, I've lost, okay, yeah, okay, so we're there. Okay, so yeah, so then the kid does. And it's here that we have to talk about adaptation. because I don't know if all of you know this, but I have 2 master's degrees in Shakespeare. And a lot of the focus of my work is in adaptation and how we change stories and how we tell stories and why we tell stories. And even more than that, like textual analysis, like how do we look at the text? What do we take out of the text? What do we bring to the text? And how does that like impact our understanding of things? And so the ending of A Christmas Carol is the most adapted part of the show. And it doesn't really matter, but like, for instance, like sometimes Scrooge, like they'll be like smash cut, and then it's Scrooge, and he's still in his nightgown, but he's got a little scarf on because it's cold outside. It actually wasn't cold. It was like 50 degrees that Christmas, and it did not snow. And so every time it snows at the end of A Christmas Carol, that's factually inaccurate. Anyway, so sometimes, so it's like, oh, and that costume, right? That means something, right? Like, oh, he's so excited, he didn't have time to put on his clothes. But sometimes there's a blackout, there's a smash cut, and then it's like Scrooge in his Sunday best. Sometimes it's Scrooge in his Sunday best, and that says something different, right? Adaptation, right? Sometimes Scrooge goes to the Cratchits with the turkey. But I have news for you, everyone. That didn't happen. Scrooge sends the turkey to the Cratchits via a taxi to Camden Town, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But this never happened, and I despise the Muppets for it. I'm just kidding. It's fine. But one of my favorite adaptations. Also, this doesn't matter at all. But one of my favorite adaptation moments is that sometimes they do this like weird thing where Scrooge is like, he's like, I'm gonna get the turkey, we're gonna go to Cratchit. And then he's like, what's up, you guys? Welcome back to my channel. Today we're pranking my employee, Bob Cratchit. I'm gonna psychologically torture him and then take care of his family forever. Like and subscribe. Like, it's like weird. He like shows up and he's like, why aren't you at work? And Bob Cratchit's like, 'cause it's Christmas. And he's like, I gotcha. And I'm like, that's a weird fucking choice, man. But anyway. We were supposed to be talking about the turkey. And the thing of it is I cannot tell you why. I cannot explain, I cannot rationalize, there is no reason why that one fucking line, the one as big as me, sir, was the thing that my brain latched onto. And like, if you've ever had a stupid hyperfocus, if you've ever gotten like really into something dumb and you're like, oh, this is so why brain? Like, why can't it be like curing cancer? And your brain's like, haha, the turkey. You're like, thank you so much. But that's what happened, right? And so I became consumed with this idea. And I wanted to know, I was like, how big was the turkey? How big was the turkey? And it is kind of here that our story actually begins. Because I Googled it, and I was like, okay. And I couldn't find an answer. And I was like, that's weird. That is arguably weird. And then I felt wrong, right? Because sometimes when you realize that there's like a knowledge gap, you're like, surely I must have fucked up. Like, I must just be Googling bad, right? But I did all of this research, and I could not find the answer. And I was like, okay. But the hyperfocus goblin was like, but you need to know the answer. And I was like, cool, all right. So he was like, well, what the fuck do I do? Like, I don't have a Jacob Marley or a time machine, but I do have textual analysis. And so I was like, okay, so sometimes when you're using textual analysis, you can use textual analysis in like a couple of different directions, right? So for example, if you're playing Hamlet, you can go to the script and you can read to be or not to be, oh, what a rogue and peasant slave, like whatever. And you can glean some information about that. But what you can also do is you can use your textual analysis brain, your little cool hat, and you can say, what do other people say about me? Like, what do other people say about Hamlet? How does that inform how my character fits in the world of the play? And I was like, okay, I'm gonna do that. Okay, so I realized that there are 4 things that we know about the turkey in A Christmas Carol. The first thing, the one as big as me, sir. And I was like, all right, that's something. That's a place to start from. But then I was like, okay, it's like just some kid. Some like random kid on the street. Like, how do we, like, maybe it's just the hyperbole of youth. Do you know what I mean? The hyperbole, like, how does this kid know? Like, is he like an expert on site guesstimating turkey weight? Like, whatever. And so I was like, I don't know. But then I was like, but then I was like, okay, but what if it's true? And then that begets more questions, because if there's a child the size of a turkey and a turkey the size of the child, like, the obvious next question is, which one tastes better? My husband wrote that joke. You can clap for it. And so I was like, oh, hold on. I just feel, okay, hold on. We'll fix it in post. Okay, hold on. We're gonna fix it in post. We're not. I'm just gonna leave this in. This is what it looks like when the person with ADHD is a special. Hold on. I did it. Okay. Maybe we'll fix it in post. I'll decide later. So then I was like, okay, well maybe that's it, right? But then I was like, but then the very next thing that Scrooge says about the turkey is he says, they shan't know who sent it, referring to him sending the turkey to the Cratchits. But he says, it's twice the size of Tiny Tim. And I must apologize, but it's here that we have to do some math. Because here's what happens. This moment creates a beautiful symmetrical equation, right? If one street urchin is equal to one turkey, and one Tiny Tim is equal to two. No, wait, no, I fucked it up. Hold on. But no, if Tiny Tim is half of a turkey, then that's like a really nice balanced symmetrical equation, right? And so I was like, okay, well then obviously we have to find out how big the fucking urchin is. So I did. So here's the thing. I'm recycling, don't worry about it. I'm gonna drink water before we get to this part. You ever like stop for a moment and like look at every single choice that you made leading up to this precise, and you're like, Jesus Christ, okay. So here's the thing. You might be wondering how I got here, right? Crowd work, we did it! Yeah. Okay, so I was like, okay, how big is this fucking kid? And the thing of it is that London in 1843 was a fascinating period in London's history because we were just outside of the Industrial Revolution. Most people say that it ended around 1840, but London was like booming with new factories and new ways to make things and this like industrial processes. And so the shape of the workforce, the breakdown of the workforce was changing. What was really interesting is that in London in 1843, 50% of the workforce was children ages 7 to 14. Now, I knew that was going to happen. So Charles Dickens rudely doesn't give us a lot more information about this kid. He doesn't tell us how old he is. He doesn't say like, oh, and he conveniently was a factory worker. Like, we don't know. He's just some kid on the street. But we do know, Charles Dickens tells us explicitly that this kid was wearing his Sunday clothes, right? And as it happened, in 1843, Christmas fell on a Monday. But Christmas became a bank holiday in 1837. So all of the factory workers, all of the laborers of London, mostly, there'd be some people who still had to work. It's like, you know, it's like pandemic people, right? Like necessary workers. But most people would have had the day off work. And so we're like, we can sort of surmise that young boy, especially being in that part of town, was probably some kind of factory worker. And so since we don't have an age, I said, okay, well, let's just sort of take the scope, right? Let's just sort of take the center of it. And we'll say that he was like between 10 and 11 years old, just for the sake of it. So London in 1843 was really fascinating as well, because science existed, but it wasn't like science yet. It was kind of like vibes. Do you know what I mean? There were like a lot of vibes. And for example, like the safety pin hadn't been invented yet. Sewing machines hadn't been invented yet. Charles Darwin wouldn't write his theory of evolution for another several years. The word dinosaur, 1 year old in 1843. There were only 6 dinosaurs in 1843. That doesn't matter at all, I'm sorry. But so anyway, so there was like, so people, you had this opportunity, right? Because like we didn't know germs existed, right? And so like if you were the guy who were like, hey guys, germs. Like that was a big deal. And so there were people who were doing all sorts of research, all sorts of interesting studies in order to sort of become the guy who solved something, who like created something new. And so in 1835, the Edinburgh Medical Society started studying child laborers with the idea that they were like, is working in a factory bad for a child? Like, right? And so they studied this group of kids. And so what they discovered was that factory or child laborers in England at the time sort of fit into three core categories. There were factory workers, and those were mostly the kids who were living in London at the time. And then there were farm workers. Those were the kids who lived outside of the cities, and they would like help on the farms and that kind of thing. And then the third category was the children that worked in the mines. And so they studied these three groups, and what they found was really interesting, and it makes sense if you think about it. But they figured out that farm workers, kids who were farm workers, were like the most robust. They were the most nourished. They had access to fresh milk and cheese and eggs and fresh air. Hooray! And so they tended to skew a little larger. Factory workers tended to be kind of like right in the middle, and then the children who worked in the mines tended to be the smallest, making them the minors. I'm not sorry. I wrote the entire show to say that joke. No, I'm just kidding. So the Edinburgh Medical Society very thoughtfully, very, very thoughtfully gives us a hard number of the average size of an 11-year-old factory worker in London at the time, and that is 48 inches tall. They rudely don't give us a weight, because then I would have been done. But luckily, we continue to track the size and scope of our children. And what we found is that the CDC did another study on like American kids recently, and they found that the average 11-year-old in America is about 54 inches tall, and they weigh about 70-ish pounds. 70-ish. And so what's nice is that we can do a little math, right? We can make this into like a little scale thing, a little ratio. That's what, thank you. That's what, I love that there's people who actually know math in the audience, and they're like, no, all of this is wrong. All of this is wrong. No, no, the ghosts. Okay. But what we can do. And so what's interesting is we see like this is like a large gap, right? And so when we're talking about this, we're talking about this is gonna just bug the shit out of me for the whole rest. Okay, it's fine, we're okay. So we can do this. So what we can do is we can kind of like take a like little sliding scale. What we can do is we can come up with around maybe like 40-ish pounds ish, right? But we also have to remember what the Edinburgh Medical Society said, which is that those children were malnourished. It's fine. I don't even need it anymore. Those children were malnourished. Those kids weren't getting a lot, right? So we can say, okay, like so let's, for the sake of like malnutrition and like I don't know, I'm just gonna stand like this and no one will know. It's fine. Like lack of access to fresh air and clean water and adequate food. We'll say that this kid is maybe somewhere between 38 and 40 pounds. Great. That's at least a place to start. Remember that it becomes important to the story later on. So the next thing that we know about the turkey in Tiny Tim's, in the Christmas Carol, that's the name of it, is that he could have never stood upon his legs, that bird. He would have snapped them short off in a minute like sticks of sealing wax. Now, I really didn't think about this ahead of time. It's fine. When I first wrote this essay, I did a government list amount of research on like the PSI of like bone breaking and like how long would it take, like how much pressure would it take to like break a turkey leg, and I'm like, it was like, and I was like, but it didn't get us a lot. It didn't get us any farther. It sort of set us along that sort of like 38 to 40 pound ratio, like range, but that was about it. But this might be a slight digression, but a fun fact about me, I used to be the entertainment director of the Georgia Renaissance Festival. And so if I had a nickel for every time that turkey legs have become like sort of like a real important part of the work that I'm doing, I would have 2 nickels. But yeah, so like it didn't really, I wasn't gonna do this, but okay. So do you guys want to know why we have turkey legs at Renaissance festivals? It's so stupid. It's so fucking dumb. It's so dumb. So here's what happened. Okay. So you have to understand the history of turkeys. The history of turkey. Turkeys were brought over by Spanish conquistadors to England. They're native to North America. Spanish conquistadors brought over turkeys in like the 15th century, and they were like, oh, that bird is muy grande, and they bring the bird over. And then through like trade routes and jealous like monarchs, they're like, your bird is big, I want a big bird too. And so then they like brought them over to England, where they start to be domesticated on like manor estates. And so turkeys start to be like a luxury item. They're like the Hermes bag of the day. And people are like, oh my God, you have such a big fucking bird. They're like, we know, we eat it. And so they become these like luxury items. But then the same thing that happens with like luxury items is that as more people start making more money, those items become attainable by like people who are making less money, right? And so by like the 1800s, when this is happening, turkeys were like kind of like a middling bird. They were fancy, they were nice, but they weren't like, oh my God, you have a turkey. Like a lot of people had turkeys, right? And this is my favorite part of the show. So they had a problem. They had a problem because of all of this industrialization, because of all this stuff that was going on. They were like, the turkeys needed a lot of room. It was hard to like grow turkeys in a city. So they had to raise the turkeys outside of the city. But then they were like, but we can't kill the turkeys because they'll go bad by the time that we get them to the city. What do we do? Do you guys want to know what they did?
Yeah.
They made the turkeys little shoes. They put little shoes on the turkeys, and then they would walk with the turkeys to London, and then they would kill them there. And that's where it gets hit. But there were little shoes. The turkeys had little shoes. And now that lives in your brain too, you fucks. Right?
You know what they look like.
I can tell you what they looked like. We have a question in the crowd. Your question, what do they look like? What they would do is they would take like you know that like the twine, like the what is that stuff called? The like rough. Oh fuck. Burlap. Yeah, they would take burlap, and then they would take like a little bit of like tar, and they would like wrap it, and so then they had like little like booties, and they would just. It was great. That's so silly. That's such a silly thing. But anyway, so what the fuck was I talking about? Right, okay, turkeys. So the turkeys, they get popular, whatever. But so this continues, right? This like cheapening of the turkeys, the accessibility of the turkeys continues and continues and continues until we get to the 1960s and the 1970s. And now we have a problem because there's too many turkeys. And people are like, what do we do with all these turkeys? And so then Walt Disney World was like, we know what we'll do with the turkeys. We'll put them in Frontierland, and we'll sell turkey legs. And so turkey legs became really popular. It's like an amusement park thing. And then that got sort of like trickled down into Renaissance fair things. But now, even modern day, we still have this problem. There is research, there are papers that exist to this day that are like, the turkey's legs keep breaking because we're breeding the turkeys too big. What do we do? And that's wild. And so what we wind up seeing is that like the turkey legs got adopted as an amusement park food because they needed to figure out what to do with like all of this cheap meat that like was so unaffordable that it becomes a symbol of abundance in A Christmas Carol. And that's crazy. I'm going to give you $20 after the show. Okay. So at this point, I was like, well, that was unhelpful, but it did kill 10 minutes of the show. And so I was like, okay, well, I am a burnt out gifted kid. I have a praise kink. I want to know that I'm right? I have this range, 38 to 40 pounds. I'm like, what do I do? And so I was like, okay, textual analysis. Textual analysis. When we think about textual analysis, we don't have to just look at the text. We can also apply like outside context, right? And so I was like, what do I know about Charles Dickens? What do I know about the man himself? And one of the things that I know is that Charles Dickens was a writer of his day. Charles Dickens was very much like writing about the things that were happening in England at the time. And in fact, a lot of his works, most of his works, were talking about social inequalities, right? Like Christmas Carol isn't just a fun story about Christmas, it's a story about inequality. So is Oliver Twist, so is Hard Times, so is like Depression House. They all have terrible names. But like all of them, right? Like he draws attention to these social issues. So it's like, okay, well, if Charles Dickens was writing of the time, and Christmas Carol came out 2 weeks before Christmas, maybe I could just go to the time. So I did. I went to the London newspaper archive and I pulled up every reference of turkey from 1840 to 1850. This is what all of the newspapers look like, and this is like a half sheet. It was fucking miserable. Also, small sidebar, there was also like a military conflict happening in Turkey at the time, and that'll fuck your life up. But here's the thing. I found the answer. I didn't tell you the answer yet. I'm sorry, that came out way more aggressive than I meant to. I'm sorry.
A for effort.
A for effort, thank you. But I found the answer. It's right there. Can you see it? No, of course you can't. It's too fucking small. I couldn't see it. I had like microfiche, you know? It was great. But yeah, so Bell's Weekly Messenger, one of the most popular newspapers of the day, millions of copies in circulations. People loved this newspaper. It was part of the collective, part of the culture. Christmas Day, 1843, 2 weeks after Christmas Carol was published, they ran a series of reviews on the butchers and the poultry shops and all of the different places where you could buy your Christmas dinner. And of Mr. Donovan's shop in Oxford, they had this to say: "The shop was crammed almost to suffocation, and the samples were of a superior order. Here was a prize turkey, perhaps the largest in London, its weight 38.5 pounds. This is the part that I want to get right. The problem was that it didn't feel like anything. It didn't feel like anything. And I don't know if it was because of like burnt out gifted kin syndrome, right? Or anything like that. But like it was fine. There was like no payoff. There was no like real like satisfaction. Like, this is the first time that I have gotten rewarded. Thank you for that applause gold star. Appreciate that very much. But I didn't get anything. It was like intellectual edging. Do you know what I mean? But the problem is that like the way that my brain works, right? The way that my ADHD manifests in my own life is that I'm constantly chasing the dopamine. And sometimes the dopamine becomes the rabbit hole, and sometimes the rabbit hole becomes the dopamine. And that is what happened in this case. Because immediately I got 38.5 pounds. That's the end of the show. You know, thank you and good night, right? But it's not, right? Because immediately I had more questions. I had more things. My brain does not deal in absolutes, right? And so I remembered that there was one more thing that we learned. There's one more thing that we know, textual analysis-wise, about the turkey in A Christmas Carol. And it is that we know where Scrooge sends it. Scrooge sends the turkey to Camden Town. And so the next question that I had was it turned out incredibly related to this. Scrooge sends the turkey to Camden Town. How long would the turkey take to cook? That was my question. The question was, how long would the turkey take to cook? And the answer was easy. It was really easy to find. It was 10 hours. It would have taken 10 hours to cook that turkey. And that's fine, right? But the thing is that he sends it to Camden Town. And this is a moment where context matters. So the show used to have a very different ending. And it was funny. It was fun. I did this whole thing. I would whackety schmack all the way, and the punchline was like, "Men are bad at Christmas presents." But the thing is that knowledge is sometimes a curse. Knowledge is sometimes a burden, because the thing is that I got mad. I got really mad. I got mad because I had been doing all this research. I've been doing all this stuff, and there are even papers about the turkey. There are studies that have been done about the turkey in A Christmas Carol, and they talk about how it's like a symbol for want. It's a symbol for abundance. It's a symbol like, oh, the Cratchits are saved, right? But nobody ever talks about that it would have taken 10 hours to cook, right? And that because we know that it got sent to Camden Town, we also know that Mrs. Cratchit didn't have a fucking oven. She didn't have an oven, right? Because here's the thing about Camden Town. The thing about Camden Town was at the time, it was a very mixed neighborhood. There were some parts of Camden Town that were nice. They were like middle class. They were like aspirational, right? But that's not where the Cratchits lived. The Cratchits lived on the other side of town. The Cratchits lived on the side of town where you could maybe barely pay your rent for 15 shillings a week. That provides a lot of context, right? So saying Camden Town, you're like, oh, cool, Camden Town. But it's the same that like if you go to see a production of Hamlet, right? And Hamlet says, get thee to a nunnery. And you're like, okay, he wants Ophelia to go be a nun, right? He wants her to go be a nun and go live a life of prayer and it should be like crusty, musty, dusty little nun. But no, it provides more context if you know that at the time, nunnery was slang for whorehouse. And that provides more context, right? And that's how I started feeling about Camden Town. But yeah, and so like there are all of these papers, there are all of these things that are talking about like how great the turkey is and like how great of a symbol it is. And the thing is that it was such a good piece of writing. Christmas Carol was so good that it worked. And it persisted. In fact, I think this is fascinating. Tomorrow is Thanksgiving. And I'm sure that some of you have seen this before, yeah? Does anybody know what this is called? The name of it?
Freedom from want.
Yes. Did you read it on the bottom?
No.
Okay, good. I'm proud of you. It's called Freedom from Want. And the thing about Freedom from Want is that it was published in the Saturday Evening Post 100 years, almost to the day of the publication of A Christmas Carol. It was published in 1943. I'm sorry, I'm getting heated. But the thing is that it got a lot of criticism. This sort of like Americana. Norman Rockwell, who painted it, he didn't even like it. And the reason why he didn't like it was because at the time there was a war going on and there were people in England who were starving and he was embarrassed about the size of the turkey. But you want to know even something else? Do you want to know something else that's going to ruin your whole day? Is that it wasn't just this painting. The Saturday Evening Post ran an article, and the article was by this guy named Carlos Bulosan, who was a Filipino immigrant. And that Filipino immigrant, he wrote this beautiful essay about how there are farm workers who can't afford to eat the foods that they are picking. There are people who are laboring in America who can't afford to live and work at the same time. He said in the essay, our challenge to tyranny is the depth of our faith in a democracy worth defending. Carlos Bulosan died of malnutrition. He starved to death after writing an essay that was the companion piece to Freedom from Want. God bless us everyone, right? And it's fun. And the thing is, I didn't tell you this was going to be a comedy show. I did, I'm sorry. But the thing of it is that this symbol, this turkey, became this symbol. And it's stupid. It's so stupid. Once you know that, once you understand Camden Town, once you understand the implications of Mrs. Cratchit having to spend 10 hours away from her family to cook a turkey with not an oven, she would have had to done it like on her fireplace, right? Like that's a shitty gift. That's a shitty thing to do. I don't know. I think like I can hear the YouTube comments now. But the thing is that I still love A Christmas Carol. I think there's glaring flaws, there are glaring issues with it, but I still love A Christmas Carol, and it is because, I don't know, because it's a story of mankind's capacity for good. It's a story of mankind's capacity for change. And I think a lot about the fact that Ebenezer Scrooge is a weird name, but so is Elon Musk. So is Mark Zuckerberg. Do you know what I mean? And I think right now, when we think about Christmas Carol in 2025, there's a lot of things that are different than Christmas of 1843. There just are, right? We have social media, we have AI, we have all of these things. But what we have is our capacity as humans to change, as humans to do better. And I think that right now, we are in a moment where there are a lot of people who are looking around and they're saying, hey, maybe we could use some change. Maybe I could be part of that change, right? Maybe I could contribute to that change, right? Empathy, compassion, the messages of Christmas Carol, right? There's so much empathy in A Christmas Carol. There's so much compassion in A Christmas Carol because Christmas Carol reminds us over and over and over through the whole text that you never know what the person next to you is going through. You never know what the person next to you is struggling with. Maybe they aren't making a lot of money. Maybe they don't have enough food at home. Maybe they have a sick kid. Maybe they're just overworked and underpaid. Do you know what I mean? But we never know. And so Christmas Carol offers us this moment to be compassionate, to be empathetic in the face of, are there no prisons? Are there no workhouses? Are there no detention centers? Do you know what I'm saying? And I don't know, in a time when we're talking about cutting SNAP benefits, when we're talking about a lot of different things all at the same time, because much like Mrs. Cratchit's fireplace, the world is on fire. It can be scary to change. It can be scary to wake up one day and say, hey, all of that stuff I did, all of that stuff I said, I was wrong. All of those beliefs that I held, I was wrong. And people might laugh at you. People laughed at Christmas Carol. People, they were for as successful, as wildly successful as Christmas Carol was, there were a lot of people who didn't like it. They mocked it. They said it was immature, it was simplistic, it was overly sentimental, blah, blah, blah. And they didn't like it. But the thing of it was, the thing that I love the most about Christmas Carol is that Christmas Carol worked. It worked. 1843 was a record-setting year for charity. 1843 was a year where we saw real social change for people who were less fortunate. And not even that, it kept happening, it kept going. Charles Dickens spent the rest of his days doing that. Do you know why? Because Charles Dickens' father went to debtor's prison. Charles Dickens was separated from his family. Charles Dickens was forced to work in a boot blacking factory under horrific working conditions. And so he wasn't writing about Scrooge as this character. He was writing himself and what might have happened if he had not held on to his belief that mankind is inherently good and that we have a capacity for change. But Scrooge still sent her a fucking turkey. And that is the lesson of the turkey, is that he still did something. Scrooge's first act, Scrooge's first thing that he did was dumb as fuck. It was impractical. It was imperfect. It was an imperfect thing. It was something that might have gotten him mocked or made fun of, but he did it anyway because he awoke saying, I'm gonna do better than I did yesterday. And he did that. And I want to leave you with one last piece of textual analysis. Because sometimes, with textual analysis, you look at what's not there. You look at the things that are absent. Like, this may shock you, but at no point in Hamlet does anybody say that he's fun at parties. Scrooge never apologizes. Scrooge never says he's sorry. And I spent a really long time wrestling with that. I spent a really long time going well, he never said he was sorry. He never asked for forgiveness. He never looked at the Cratchits and begged them on his knees to forgive him for the economic plight that he had put him into. But Charles Dickens tells us what happened. And it's that Scrooge kept his word. Scrooge did what he said every day he woke up, and he became a better man than he was the day before. And Christmas Carol closes like this. Scrooge was better than his word. He did it all, and infinitely more. And to Tiny Tim, who did not die, he was a second father. He became as good a friend, as good a master, as good a man as the good old city knew, or any other good old city, town, or borough in the good old world. Some people laughed to see the alteration in him, but he let them laugh, and little heeded them, for he was wise enough to know that nothing ever happened on this globe for good, at which some people did not have their fill of laughter in the outset. And knowing that such as these would be blind anyway, he thought it quite as well that they should wrinkle up their eyes in grins as have the malady in less attractive forms. His own heart laughed, and that was quite enough for him. He had no further intercourse with spirits.
That he knows of.
Ooh.
And it was always said of him that he knew how to keep Christmas well. If any man alive possessed the knowledge, may that truly be said of us and of all of us. And so, as Tiny Tim observed, God bless us, everyone. Tidings of comfort and joy. Thank you and good night. There's no play. Oh God. There's like no. I got more facts, Wes. Do you want to know what they had for dinner? They had potatoes. They had gravy. They had a Christmas pudding. Thank you all so much for coming. If I may, I just want to say thank you. This has been something that I've been working on for a while. It changed dramatically every time I did it. That was the first time that I ever got through the whole thing all at once. Don't put that on the internet, Kate. That's silly. But yeah, and especially I would like to thank my husband, who has been just patiently sitting in the living room listening to me do this. But yeah, I hope you liked it. Thank you for coming. And if you didn't like it, my name is That's it, seriously good.